greatest natural resources, the most beautiful landscapes in the world. You realize America really is blessed. The second thing you learn is that the greatness of the land is matched by the greatness of the people. I mean, obviously, every politician praises the American people, but I feel like after 19 months, I've got some special credentials to say. The American people are a decent and generous people. They are a hard-working people. They are an independent and self-reliant people. They are looking after their families. They are giving back to their communities. They are a good people. That is something that, if you have any doubt. But the third thing that you learn as you're campaigning over 19 months is that the American people are worried. They're anxious. They're anxious about their futures, but more importantly, they're anxious about the futures of their children and their grandchildren. And why should not they be worried? When you think about what's been happening economically in this country, during Bill Clinton's era in the 1990s, incomes for the average family went up by $6,000. During George Bush's reign in the White House, we have seen the average family income go down by $1,000. So people's economic fortunes have been reversed, unless you are in the top 0.1% of this country. You are not better off than you were 4 years ago or 8 years ago. And I don't need to tell you the statistics because you know it in your own lives. It's harder to save. It's harder to retire. You have not seen your wages go up. You have not seen your incomes go up. You've seen jobs shipped overseas. You see people at the same time have seen costs of everything from gasoline to groceries. And so people feel squeezed. And they end up, for a while, taking out home equity loans to try to make the budget balance at the end of the month. Maybe they max out on their credit cards, except now, because nobody was minding the store when it came to mortgages, nobody was paying attention to what predatory lenders were doing. People were being induced to take out loans that they couldn't afford. The housing market has collapsed, and now people can't use home equity loans. And their credit cards are maxed out. And the credit card companies are always changing the terms because they've been able to maneuver in Congress to get these laws passed. And they don't know where to turn. The American people are not a pessimistic people. They are by nature optimistic. And so people are still working hard, or they're looking for work. They're still doing what they're supposed to be doing. But they also are worried that maybe the American dream is slipping away, slipping through their fingers. That maybe if we look back 20 years from now, if we haven't brought about fundamental change, then maybe, just maybe, our children will not have a better life than we did. That's the danger that people see. That's the concerns that they have. They're day-to-day concerns, but they're also projecting out 10, 20 years from now. They understand that we can't keep on doing the same things we've been doing and expect a different result. And that's why I'm running for President of the United States of America, to bring about fundamental change in the nation and fundamental change in this country. Now, my opponent, John McCain, he's been talking about how he puts the country first. But I have to say that it's not an example of putting country first when you say that George Bush's economic policies had shown great progress. He said that just a few months ago. He said, you know, we made great economic progress under George Bush. Then he started running ads saying, oh, Obama's just going to raise your taxes and he'll lead to an economic disaster. Mr. McCain, let me explain to you, the economic disaster is happening right now. Maybe you haven't noticed. He's got his major economic advisors calling you whiners. He said, oh, yeah, the American people are whining. This is what one of McCain's top advisors said. A nation of whiners, he said. They have a mental depression. They're just imagining that things are bad. This guy obviously does not pump his own gas. He obviously doesn't do his own shopping. He's obviously not paying his own bills. The economic disaster is here right now. And the question we have, the choice we have in this election is, are we going to keep on doing the same things as John McCain is promoting, or are we going to bring about a fundamental change in this country? Are we going to create an economy that works for everybody, not just some? Are we going to have a tax code that reflects the value and dignity of work and not just wealth? John McCain's advisors must not have met the single mom who's working 2 jobs and still doesn't have health care. I meet him everywhere I go. John McCain's economic advisors must not have talked to the guy who has lost his job and is having to pack up the equipment in the factory that he's worked in for 20 years. And his father worked 20 years before him because his job's been shipped overseas. And he hasn't just lost his job, he's lost his pension, he's lost his health care, and he's lost his sense of self-worth. He feels like a failure because he can't support his family anymore. John McCain's advisors aren't listening to those people. John McCain's advisors obviously are not listening to the young person who has the grades and the will and the drive to go to college, but doesn't have the money and needs some help. These people are not looking for a handout. They're not looking for a pork barrel project. They're not looking for some big government program. All they're looking for is a little bit of help. All you're looking for is that if you're able and willing to work, you can find a job that pays a living wage. That keeps a roof over your head. That allows you to support a family. That if you get sick, you're not going to be bankrupt. That you can send your child to a good school and they can go to college even if they're not wealthy. That you can retire with dignity and respect after a lifetime of labor. That's what people are looking for. That's why I'm running for president of the United States of America. But John McCain's economic advisors have a different idea. That's why the central part of John McCain's economic plan is $300 billion worth of tax breaks to the same folks who've been getting the tax breaks under George Bush. He wants to continue the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, and then he wants to double down and give tax breaks to folks like ExxonMobil. $1.2 billion in tax breaks. These folks made record profits over the last 3 quarters, more money than any corporation in the history of America. John McCain thinks they deserve a little more in terms of tax breaks. Well, I don't know about you, but I've got a different idea, which is to say we're going to give tax relief to middle-income Americans and working Americans. We're going to give $1,000 to every family so that they can offset some of these rising costs. And yes, we will pay for it by closing down some of these Bush tax breaks and these corporate loopholes and tax havens. John McCain, we were informed the other day, Rick Warren asked him, well, what do you consider rich? John McCain said, well, I don't know, maybe $5 million. So I guess it's okay. This explains why his tax plan gives hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax breaks to people making more than $2.5 million, because I guess they're middle class. So I want to see a show of hands. Everybody making more than $2.5 million, raise your hand. You might want to think about voting for John McCain. Because he's going to be looking out for them, but he's not looking out for most of the people in this auditorium. That's what's at stake in this election. That's what's at stake when it comes to health care. He's got a plan that says we're going to eliminate tax breaks to employers who offer health care to their families or to their employees. And in exchange, every family is going to get a $5,000 tax credit so they can go buy their own insurance. Now that sounds pretty good until you learn that the average family needs $12,000 to $14,000 to buy health insurance. So you can end up seeing thousands of people, actually millions of people losing health insurance under John McCain's plan. That's not change you can believe in. That's not change you want. It is change. It makes things worse. So, here's the bottom line. If you think that this economy is working well, if you think George Bush has been a good steward of the economy, then you should vote for John McCain. If, on the other hand, you think that we've got some fundamental decisions that we've got to make to rebuild America, to invest in our schools, and invest in our infrastructure, and invest in our healthcare system, investing in our people, so that they can live out their version of the American dream, then you need to vote for Barack Obama for President of the United States. One last important point, then we're going to open it up for questions. You know, I know that Democrats haven't been that successful in presidential elections over the last few seconds. And so, everywhere I go, people have told me, oh, I'm getting nervous. The Republicans, they're so mean. They're going to swift boat you. They're doing things to you. What are we going to do? And I have to just remind people that it is true that just as John McCain has embraced George Bush's policies, he's embraced his politics. I mean, the same guys who brought you George Bush are now trying to package John McCain. And they basically got the same strategy, which is they can't win an argument on ideas, so what they're going to do is they're going to try to attack me. Right? So they have ads with Paris and Brittany. And they've got some, you know, this may not be directly affiliated with the campaign, but, you know, suddenly, magically, you've got the same guy who wrote Unfit for Command. He comes out with a book saying that I'm a nut. And, you know, people are questioning my patriotism and saying, and John McCain himself personally says I'd rather lose a war so I could win an election. You know, that's, but look, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised. They've been doing this every election. They did it to John Kerry. They did it to Gore. They tried to do it to Clinton. They did it to Dukakis. That's what they do. That's their politics. But I'm just here to tell you, Albuquerque, that it's not going to work this time. It's not going to work this time. It's not going to work because there's too much at stake. And you know there's too much at stake. But in order for us to win, we not only have to beat the attack machine, we've got to win back the trust of the American people. Americans are feeling cynical about government, and rightfully so. They've heard for 20 years that we're going to solve health care. They've heard for 20 years that we're going to deal with energy, and nothing ever happens. They've heard for 20 years we're going to improve our schools, and they don't get better. And so they feel discouraged. And they feel discouraged not just about Republicans, but they feel discouraged about Democrats too. And so one of the things that we have to understand, and this I can't do alone, you've got to help me. We've got to understand what is at stake, and we've got to say, you know what? We are going to earn back the trust of the American people. We are going to fight for you. You are going to be heard in the corridors of power. We're going to have a White House and a Congress that is working and listening to you. Not listening to the special interests. listening to all the lobbyists that John McCain surrounds himself with and who are running his campaign, but listening to you and working for you. And when we do that, there is nothing we can't do. I have so much confidence in America's future when we come together and we restore that bond of trust between our government and our people, that sense of accountability between our government and our people. When we start doing that, then we are going to set up a system where everybody who needs health insurance can get health insurance that's at least as good as the health insurance I have as a member of Congress. And if you've already got health insurance, we're going to lower your premiums, and we're going to put more money into prevention, and we are going to use new technologies to cure diseases, and we're not going to wait 20 years from now to do it or 10 years from now to do it. We're going to do it by the end of my first term as President of the United States of America. When we restore that sense of trust, then we can finally have an economy that works for all Americans from the bottom up. And we can make sure that we are creating good jobs, investing in our infrastructure, following the lead of people like Governor Richardson, and investing in solar and wind and biodiesel, clean energies that can put Americans back to work, jobs that won't get exported overseas. We can raise the minimum wage to keep up with inflation so that people who work can actually look after their families. We can stop giving tax breaks to companies that ship jobs overseas and save those tax breaks for companies that are investing right here in Albuquerque, right here in New Mexico. We can stop peddling slogans like No Child Left Behind and actually start funding early childhood education and paying our teachers more money and giving them more support. And investing in our young people by saying, if you graduate from college, if you graduate from high school, we will make sure that college is affordable for you. You're going to have to put some time in community service, joining the Peace Corps, or working in an underserved school, or working in an underserved hospital, that we are going to make sure that you can get a college education. That's a guarantee you can make for every young person in America. And we can invest in science and technology and build on discoveries that can guide our nation for years to come. And we can have a foreign policy in which our military remains the strongest in the world, and we are hunting down Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and starting to draw our troops home from Iraq, and we are regaining credibility and respect around the world. That is something that every American is looking for, and we need to change Washington to bring it about. We've got work to do. This is not going to be easy. It would be nice, you'd think, given how badly Bush and his folks have performed over the last 8 years, and considering the fact that John McCain has facilitated and worked with the Bush administration on this disaster, you'd like to think that folks would just say, well, we don't even have to run TV ads. You just open up the newspapers and say, we're going to throw the bombs out. But, American politics is never that easy. We've got to work hard. We've got to earn this election. But the reason I'm so confident that the American people are going to stand up and bring about the change we need is they understand that it's not just their lives at stake, it's their kids' lives that are at stake as well. Americans will put up with a lot of stuff. We're not, contrary to what John McCain's advisors say, we're not a bunch of whiners. We will suck it up and we will work hard even when things are unfair. But what really gets us mad, what really starts motivating and activating us, is when we start feeling like the rules are so tilted in favor of the special interests. and the lobbyists and the fat cats that our kids might not have better opportunities than we have. And when we start feeling that, that's when Americans rise up. That's when we know change is going to come about. And that's what's going to happen in this election. The American people are standing up and they're saying that we want to look back 20 years from now and know that we made the decisions right here on energy independence. And we made the decisions on the tax code. And we made decisions on investing in infrastructure. And we made the decisions on our foreign policy. And we made the decisions on health care that have led our children to have a better life. That's what this statement is. You'll vote for it, and you will change the country and change the world. Thank you, everybody. God bless you. We got more work to do. We got more work to do. Now, we've got microphones in